Good evening, Shock Factor audience. Welcome to our first ever podcast. We've worked long and hard to get this idea just up and running, and we'll start by introducing my co-host, Max Angelini. Take it away.
Hey guys, how are we doing tonight? My name is Max Angelini. I'm a 20-year-old URI student. I'm a business marketing major, and I'm from North Kingstown, Rhode Island.
My name is Jack Benavides. I'm also a host on Shock Factor podcast. I'm a freshman business administration major at University of Rhode Island, and I'm also going for my minor in sports media. In my free time, I like to play football and basketball, and I love to talk about sports and any great ideas. So I look forward to this show.
Love it. Well, I'm Nando. I'm a freshman at URI. I'm currently a marketing major, and really excited to get this show up and going. For sure.
What's going on, guys? My name is Cam. I'm a University of Maine track and field commit. I'm going to be studying finance. I was a first team All-Stater as a sophomore and a four-year varsity player at Bishop Hendricken for basketball. And excited to get this ball rolling and see what we can do with it.
Everyone here is like a like-minded individual in the fact where we kind of all have the same mindset. So, I mean, bringing these people together, I mean, at the beginning of this show was these people didn't know each other, and bring everyone together, and we built a great team, and I'm very excited for our first episode tonight, boys. So without further ado, let's get underway with it.
Mm-hmm.
So starting out, we're going to talk about the national championship last night. Obviously, it wasn't as interesting as we hoped, but I think we definitely want to, take a little bit out of it what we can. And the biggest thing I think we want to take out of it is the performance by Heisman winner Devonta Smith. He had 12 catches, 215 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And what makes his performance so, amazing is the fact that he only played 2 quarters. He only played the first half, and after that, they ended up taking him out.
And he really posted a highlight reel like that a player would post. Like NFL players can't even hit that in a game. You know what I mean? 200 yards, 12 catches in one half is.
It was Madden-like. It was Madden.
Madden-like, perfect.
And I thought he was going to get 20 catches.
Yeah, he's going into this NFL draft right now being a projected top 10 pick. I mean, some people are saying the Dolphins are going to take him, pair him with Tua. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of places to go, but one thing's for certain is that no matter what team he goes to, they're going to be very lucky to have him. I mean, he's gaining comparisons like to Jerry Rice. He's 6'1", he's 175. He's a very, very skinny guy. He's not exactly your model Heisman Trophy winner, but he's gaining comparisons to Jerry Rice. And there's a reason that he's getting comparisons to Jerry Rice. I think that's amazing.
Also want to keep him. Sorry.
No,
also want to keep in mind, he's also not the fastest player out there on the field. His teammate Waddle, he ran a 4.27 while Smith is only running a 4.49. So he's definitely not going to burn people, but I think his route running is definitely what's going to, have him go up higher off the board during the draft.
And when you talk about like a 4.49, like for a receiver, that's slow.
Compared to other receivers, it's like not that impressive. I mean, it is impressive, but it's not. It's not.
He's running a 4.3 and he's like 6'4". You know what I mean? It's different.
Exactly. It's not like some kind of Calvin Johnson or Julio Jones where they're just an athletic freak. It's like really, it's his route running. It's just his agility, his quickness, and his ability to just separate himself. And he's making hands, of course.
That's why he is the perfect underdog story, as you can see, because I mean, he was not recruited heavily. He's a 4-year player. He had to work his way up. He had to prove his worth, and he did it at the highest level. And he proved he was the best receiver in the country, stats-wise, and he took home the Heisman. So,
I mean, when you look at his progression through Alabama, his first year he had like 160 yards, 3 touchdowns. Second year he had like upwards of 680 yards or so. A few more touchdowns. Then his third year he really burst on 1,400 yards, 14 touchdowns. He had a very, very good year. And then this last year, 117 catches, 1,800 yards, 24 total touchdowns. I mean, those are deserving stats.
That's Heisman numbers. That's
Heisman numbers. For sure, but I also want to point out that the past few years, he's also had some amazing wide receiver, teammates there as well, like Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy. So as much as it was, yes, a progression, maybe it's just he wasn't getting as much snaps as the other players because everyone wanted to start on that team, on Alabama.
In the rotation, I mean, he learned from the best. I mean, you look at CD, you look at Jerry Jeudy. Those guys first year are
CD, I missed that one.
Yeah, CD Lamb had a great year this year. So did Henry Ruggs. I mean, there was an amazing wide receiver class. Justin Jefferson, CD Lamb, all of them.
They burst on scene in the NFL this year and made DBs.
Absolutely. It was a great draft class for wide receivers.
It was.
He has to be getting better in a program like that. I mean, you're spending that much time at a school like Alabama, especially for football. The sky's the limit if you're working hard. And you have all the resources.
Extremely Saban has a 7th ring now. You're good. Saban just got a 7th ring. I mean, coming in with 6 rings, he got his 7th. I mean, that speaks for itself.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're all Patriots fans here, but that's Bill Belichick-esque. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we get you. We get your.
Yeah, I know you're the Eagles. They always see it in the
Quiet
back.
down over there.
4-12.
4-12. But I want to talk about
worst division of the league history.
Worst division. Yeah, a week ago they were the only team eliminated in the worst division in history. I just want you guys to think about that real quick.
And Zach Ertz and Dougie Peterson, that combination is no longer. You could see Ertz's Instagram where he said goodbye to my favorite coach, and that's about it. He's on to the next.
But I want to get back to Devonta Smith real quick. A lot of people don't think he'll get taken over Lamar Chase due to his size. I want to see what you guys think about that.
You know, it's difficult. I mean, when you have someone in Alabama, you know, you got there's a lot of talent there. It's the culture, it's the organization. It's a place where players go and they flourish. You know, they find their absolute best selves. So I do understand, you know, the belief, you know, that if he comes out of the NFL, will it translate, you know, is concisely and is, you know, clearly, will he be as effective as he was at Alabama on an NFL team against NFL caliber players? And I understand the concern, but, you know, again, I want to go back. He won the Heisman for a reason. You know, he's 6'1", 175.
Exactly.
And for a receiver, I think it's important to highlight that it's pretty skinny. You know what I mean? That's a smaller size receiver. So to see someone that size put up those numbers, it means that they're an elite class of separation. They're in an elite class of route running. They're in an elite class of wide receiver. And I don't think that can be ignored. And I understand size, absolutely. It's nice having a Calvin Johnson-esque receiver who's, 6'5", an athletic monster who can just jump over everyone and, with his mitts, just grab the ball out from defenders' hands. That's an amazing thing to have. But I think you can't undermine the skill that Devonta Smith has. And I have seen that they do believe Ja'Marr Chase is going to go over him for that exact reason. As a GM, it's difficult because Ja'Marr Chase is extremely skilled, and I don't want to take anything away from him. But Devonta Smith, I think could be and very well may be a generational talent.
It also comes down to who's NFL ready, though. I mean, we talk about generational talent. Let's look at the definition of generational talent. It's a Stephen Curry, it's a Michael Jordan, it's a Kobe Bryant.
LeBron James, yeah.
Who's going to pave the way for the sport and change the way the game is played so differently that his opponents have to adapt to the way he plays and have to prepare for his different style. I mean, we saw Devonta Smith last night. He made it look like he was he was just blowing through holes.
It looked like a video game.
Yeah.
It really did because he was touching the ball in open space.
I would be hesitant to draft him immediately because of his size. I think it's harder to mold a player. He's also a little bit older, around like 21, 22 years old.
22.
A 4-year player.
And
So you kind of know what you're getting with him. And I don't know if necessarily – I mean, he's undoubtedly a great player, but I think maybe you take if you're one of the bottom teams that's really trying to rebuild your program, you might want to take someone with a little bit more potential because you kind of know what you're going to get with him, and he isn't. I wouldn't say necessarily like a DK Metcalf or a Julio Jones type player. I think that the experience.
But you have to remember,
in the NFL,
he's joining an NFL team that has professional trainers, professional, people who.
I think Alabama's
muscle.
Alabama's pretty close to that, though. I think it's hard to really say that they're not going to be able, like, he's going to go to the NFL and find a second gear because of like new like resources that he's going to find because they're pretty much an NFL team. Like, I mean, they have facilities that are out.
They're that good. They have been that good historically speaking.
They're coached like an NFL team, and if you look at the way that their success speaks for itself, you can tell that they're coached like an NFL team.
I mean, this year there was a clear margin between the skill level of their team and the skill level of other teams because through the playoffs and through just the season, I mean, it was an undefeated regular season, 13
and
an undefeated season that for itself, and it wasn't even like they were close games. I mean, they were by a 1, 2, 3 score margin, and that's very impressive, especially in any sport, football especially.
So
also, I don't want to get this stat wrong or anything like that. I'll just say like rough numbers. I was watching, when I was watching the game, they said Alabama scored like a touchdown on something like 30 out of like 40 drives or something like that.
Yeah,
Like,
that offense was something to be reckoned with for sure.
So to close that gap, Devonta Smith, as we know, in one half of football played, 12 catches, 215 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was obviously the MVP of this game in a 52-24 decimation of Ohio State for the national title.
Yeah.
Congratulations to Alabama and Nick Saban for his 7th win. And now let's go to the NFL and talk about this playoff picture that we got in front of us. We had a big weekend for football. As we can know, Baker Mayfield, we can look at the playoff picture right in front of us. Thank you, Cam. So as we can see, the Browns upset the Steelers this weekend, and now they're on to the Chiefs. And the Bills get the Ravens as the 2 seed, Ravens as the 5. And then on the other side, we can look at the Packers versus Rams, which is a marquee matchup all the way through. Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Ramsey, and Jared Goff with a broken thumb. And then we have the Saints at Bucks, which is one of our marquee matchups, which Max will get into.
So, starting out, we're just going to go into the playoff picture for this coming weeks, and I think the first game we want to highlight is definitely the Buccaneers versus the Saints, which, we're excited for the same reason that everyone is. Breeze versus Brady 3, and it's the first time in history they're finally playing each other in the postseason. When, Tom Brady was in the Patriots, the AFC, Drew Brees was on the Saints, the NFC. They never actually met in a Super Bowl and had a chance to compete head-to-head in that, playoff one-game elimination style. So this is going to be a game to watch. You have arguably the number 1 greatest quarterback of all time versus number 2. And you can argue either for either of those positions. Brady is the 1 or Brady is the 2 and vice versa. It's a very, very important game for both of them. And I think Tom Brady personally, he went to Tampa as a means of proving himself to the world and showing, hey, it's not Bill Belichick. I'm not a system quarterback. I'm an elite level player. I'm very smart. I know how to run a team, and I'm going to succeed with or without this coach.
He also had top tier talent in the league this year.
Oh, absolutely. One of the best offenses, historically speaking. Absolutely. In terms of talent, it was one of the most talented offenses in NFL history. And I think this game for Tom Brady is a prove it game. He already has 6 rings. His career is very solidified. He's going to be a Hall of Famer, undoubtedly. He's always going to be a top 3 quarterback of all time. But Tom Brady's always had this, this mindset of not just settling. And he doesn't want to settle for number 2. He doesn't want to settle for number 3. To him, this is a game of legacy, I think. I think he really, he wants to come out and prove himself. And I think Drew Brees would also treat it the same way. Drew Brees doesn't have as many rings as Tom Brady, but he does have him in the stats in terms of passing stats. And this is kind of, his chance to overthrow Tom Brady and put another question mark on Tom Brady's legacy as to whether or not he is the number 1 greatest quarterback of all time, or if Drew Brees is.
And we kind of
continue.
And we kind of have, I agree with the personal matchups. Usually in the NFL, it's a team sport, but this is the best positional player versus the other best positional player of their draft class. As you know, they were drafted very close to each other and, years apart, and they have always been playing against each other in their careers. So now if we look at the stats, the Buccaneers with the 8th, they come in with the 8th ranked defense in the NFL as opposed to the Saints 5. So both teams very, very solid on the defensive end. And the Bucs, as Max was saying, adding on to that, sorry, I was reading the private chat. You guys messed me up.
Sorry.
So the Bucs are obviously one of the best passing offenses in the league, number 2, just behind KC and Pat Mahomes. And rushing, though, they're 27th with Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette by committee. Does that surprise you at all?
No, it's a Tom Brady-led offense, and this is always how it's kind of been. On the Patriots, they were never high in, terms of like NFL rushing offenses. It's very typical for a Tom Brady-led offense.
Okay. And so then Saints come in at 19th passing offense, and that's largely due to
Taysom absent.
And Taysom Hill had to come in and run this option offense that a lot of people really haven't seen. And they actually do have the 6th rushing offense in the league, which is top 10 rushing. So
Alvin Kamara, they ran a lot of wild cards, Taysom Hill.
They got a couple of really good studs and solid runners on that team. So I think that it's going to be an interesting matchup in the fact that one team's a high passing matchup and one team has a high rushing matchup, and it's kind of like opposites, but both with great defenses.
Both great defenses. I think it's really, about what defense takes a stand. Both offenses are, prolific, one of the best in the NFL. Both can, go off for 30, 40, even 50 points a game if you give them the opportunity to. It's just about if they're going to get the opportunity to and what defense is really going to set up. So when we're looking at the odds right here, the Bucs are actually underdogs. They're plus 145. The Saints are overdogs, minus 165. I personally, being a Tom Brady lifelong fan and, watching him as a kid, I'm taking Tom Brady because I don't think he's going to go down like this. I think he's going to refuse to lose to the Saints. I know how Tom Brady is as a player in the Patriots. I know how much he loves to prove himself. I'm taking the Bucs in this matchup.
You're taking Bucs?
Yes, sir.
And I'll take my pick here. I like Tom Brady in this game. I think he's surgical, but I didn't see enough against, the Washington had a very good defense, but he didn't really kill them. You know what I mean? He didn't go there and blow them out of the water. He kind of played with them. And I get that football is a game that is played, to other teams' strengths. But at the end of the day, the Saints are coming hungry. They have Michael Thomas healthy. They have a very good core. Drew Brees is going to want to go and take Tom Brady's name right off the Hall of Fame and wanting to move up. So this is absolutely a personal game, and I'm taking Drew Brees and the Saints on this one, unfortunately.
I think Taysom Hill might also be the greatest utility player of all time.
I don't know all time, but he is currently in the NFL. Yeah.
Who's a better utility player?
I can't say I know enough.
I can't think of
I don't think there's anyone in the league that's. I think the only person that even have the potential to do that I've seen is Cam Newton, maybe playing outside a tight end or something at his size. But Taysom Hill, with his ability to block and play tight end as well as play quarterback, is undeniably.
Play linebacker too.
It's unique.
He was on kickoff. He was on punt. They literally had him.
Everything. He does everything. He's a jack of all trades.
Yeah, I agree. So we have our picks. So Max is taking Tom Brady. He's old.
Taking Tom Brady in the Bucs.
And I'm gonna take the Saints. But now we're gonna get into the Baltimore at Bills game, which we have a nice little marquee over here that we picked. And we chose Baltimore and Bills game over the Chiefs-Browns game because we think that this is going to be a better matchup all around, and we think that we're going to see a little bit more of a closer game here. Baltimore coming in with the second-ranked defense against Bills' middle-of-the-road 16th defense, and Baltimore with the worst passing offense in the league at 32, but with the best rushing offense in the league at 1. And historically, they like to line up with two fullbacks on the outside and run an option all around. They run a crazy scheme, as you can see. If you watch them, they run a double wing tight scheme, and they run all the time. They're
running offense, especially with Lamar Jackson. It's a perfect fit,
Just about to say that he had like 136 rushing yards in the last game. Just like
he's a running back.
They can contain him. Yeah,
he's not only yet.
I would take the Bills in this matchup. I think that the Ravens are a little bit one-sided on the offensive side, and that's kind of their strength to a certain extent. And I think that there's definitely a chemistry issue that's taking place with them. I know a lot of the outside guys are kind of frustrated with Lamar, and it's been shown over social media throughout the season. So I would take the Bills.
I couldn't agree more personally. My thing is the Ravens last year in the NFL were arguably one of the best teams in the NFL. With Lamar Jackson's MVP season, it was a lot of fun to watch them, and quite honestly, it was again like watching a video game because teams didn't know how to stop him. And I think this year the Ravens have taken a noticeable drop off. I mean, they're in a division with two other teams who were in the playoffs, the Browns and Steelers, and now the Ravens were also in the playoffs. 3 teams, they weren't even at the top of the division, which, I mean, it's a very, very good division. But considering how good that team was last year, I expected more. I think they underachieved this year. They're in the playoffs, so that does, that is important. But at the end of the day, this team I don't think is as good as they were last year. I think teams have kind of figured out how to contain Lamar Jackson, how to fluster him, how to get people onto him and make him uncomfortable in the pocket, force him to get out, and force him to throw, most importantly. Because when you make Lamar Jackson throw, they lose games.
And he's last right now. So
I think the Bills win this matchup.
Unfortunately, I'm going to take my pick, and I'm going to take Baltimore in this one. And it's just because I think Lamar Jackson doesn't really show – I don't think the Baltimore Ravens show everything that they're going to give their opponent. They kind of were not really passing the ball as much. They kind of went run heavy and won that game due to the run. They just kept running it down their throat. Derrick Henry with about 50 yards obviously was a non-factor. But Baltimore's defense is what I think is going to win them this game. I think that stacking the box and sending 4 to 8 guys every single time and making every player guess, and Lamar, I don't know. I think that with that and Lamar and J.K. Dobbins, I think that Baltimore has a good shot to win this game. But as we shall see when they play, that's why we play.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you, honestly. With their second-ranked defense, I mean, Lamar, I know his passing game isn't the best, obviously. He's last in that. But I just don't see the Bills' 20th rush defense stopping Ravens' number one rush. And I think they're going to struggle with that all night.
I agree. With that being said, so we have all those games reviewed. We had our two marquees, obviously, which are Saint versus fucking
Buccaneers.
Sorry. And
Buccaneers, Bills versus Ravens.
Yeah, that's a blooper. It's okay though. So now we're gonna switch over to Nando with the Texans.
Yeah, so this is a good segment right here. So do we have the picture of the tweet?
Actually, we don't have the tweet for this one, but
We don't. Okay, no, I have it right here. So, all right. So we have Andre Johnson, a franchise player for the Texans, right? So he came out on Twitter and said, "If I'm Deshaun Watson, I will stand my ground. The Texans organization is known for wasting players' careers. Since Jack Esterbay has walked into the building, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, nothing good has happened in/for the organization, and for some reason, someone can't seem to see what's going on. Pathetic." So,
I mean, I think that's pretty. I think that says something. I mean, Andre Johnson is a Texans legend, arguably one of the best Texans of all time up there with J.J. Watt. He leads them in catches all time, yards all time, and receiving touchdowns all time. I mean, he is a staple. He was a cornerstone of their team. Even they haven't historically been good, but through all those years, he was a bright spot for fans and for that team. So for him to come out and say something like that, that speaks volume about the integrity of this organization.
I agree
for sure, and I want to talk about this as well. So Adam Schefter, a tweet, he said, it's also worth noting that one source this week after Houston traded Pro Bowl wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins last season, Deshaun Watson's anger level was at a 2. This season, his anger level is at a 10, and that's in quotes.
Wow.
So
I mean, he made it clear.
He's very frustrated with the situation.
He made it clear he wanted to be a part of the GM search, and the team just blatantly went out there and didn't include him in the GM search, and he had to find out on Twitter of the GM that they were hiring. They didn't even tell him. It says a lot about the integrity of the organization. It almost seems like they just don't care about what Deshaun Watson, who is their franchise quarterback and franchise player, has to say or what he feels.
And this kind of comes down to like a front office. Sorry to cut you off, Nando. This kind of comes down to like a front office decision. You know what I mean? Like when you look at players, I mean, I know this is a different sport, but it still should be the same. Your superstars should be treated like front office managers. They help run the team. They help bring the motivation into the team, and they are kind of the life of the team. So when you take a guy like Deshaun Watson, who is arguably the captain of that team, he is the captain of that team, and you say, okay, let's get a new GM. That's changing your organization.
Absolutely. It's an organizational, shift, movement.
Yes. So basically, that's a little, he probably feels a little disrespected. And after you the relationship with management kind of starts, okay, now you're going behind my back, I'm gonna go behind yours. And that's where we kind of see this frustration with Deshaun Watson, knowing how good he is, but his team obviously not really treating him the way he should, with blatant disrespect and not valuing his opinion on general managers, which directly affects him and his team. So I would say if he leaves, I'm not surprised, man. I mean, if he
and I want to talk about again. You saying how good Watson is. He's one of 4 quarterbacks that in an NFL season finished with more than 4,500 passing yards, right? More than 30 interceptions and fewer than 10 interceptions, and an average of 8.5 yards per carry, right? So that's joining Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, and Matt Ryan. And in each of these seasons, for example, Peyton Manning went 12-4. Aaron Rodgers. So Peyton Manning went 12-4 in that season that he did this. Aaron Rodgers went 15-1, and Matt Ryan went 11-5. All amazing years. While Watson went 4-12.
Says a lot about the organization.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
Talent. It's just that there's no chemistry. There's problems between players, and
they traded their generational talent in Jadeveon Clowney. He was their stud.
Yeah, generational talent, Jadeveon Clowney, and then also DeAndre Hopkins, who is the best receiver in the league right now, for a bag of chips. Like David Johnson, unfortunately, is not that good anymore. 2nd round pick? Are you kidding me? Like, it's DeAndre Hopkins. You know what I mean? Like,
and as an Eagles fan, I saw what he did against Philly versus Arizona.
Yeah,
he just
violated you guys.
Single-handedly.
Violated. He violated.
Yeah.
They hit him away for a back.
DeAndre was kind of a question coming into this season. I feel like you're like, all right, well, I'm kind of excited to see him play with Kyler, but let's see how good he actually is. He proved it doesn't matter who's throwing him the ball. He's going to catch it regardless. So
he backs up his talk. Absolutely.
He did back up his talk. But we are getting off track here. So we're on DeAndre Hopkins when we were talking about the Texans. He's obviously an ex-player. But wrapping up this segment, the Texans obviously kind of in a controversial time in the organization right now. They had a 4-12 season, about to lose their franchise quarterback that they drafted in the first round. And it's just not looking good for them right now. But let's hope that, things change in the future. But we're going to change topics now, and I have a question of the day, and this is an NBA-related question, and it has to pertain to James Weisman and LaMelo Ball. And my question is, which player is better for the respective team, James Weisman or LaMelo Ball?
So with this kind of question, we're more analyzing not who's the better overall player because, you can go into that. It's a whole different conversation. We're talking about who fits their niche better? What team needs each of their respective players more? And in my opinion, I'm on James Wiseman's side. I think James Wiseman is more needed on the Warriors team. I think that was the perfect draft pick for them. I saw going into the season, I kind of thought they were going to draft him, considering historically speaking, the Warriors haven't had good big men. And they've obviously had Draymond Green, but Draymond Green is, he's 6'7", he's 6'8", he's absolutely, a great power forward, a great defensive presence, but he's not that rebounding presence that the Warriors have needed so badly for so long. They've had Curry, Klay Thompson. They have position. They have everything else filled out.
Well, Wiseman's replacing Bogut and guys like Andrew Lee and guys that Warriors have never had a big man.
They've never had a big man.
I don't know. I think they've had a pretty solid big man. I think that Anderson Varejao and Bogut played solid minutes for them. I think JaVale McGee, even though he's kind of new.
Those were all role players. Those were never.
Yeah, but I don't think James Wiseman is really. I don't think he's really exceptional yet. I mean, I think he's playing well for a rookie, but I don't think that he's necessarily playing above his means.
Well,
LaMelo is. I think LaMelo is definitely playing beyond what was expected. Yeah, what was expected of him. A lot of people were doubting him because he was playing against like bums in Australia and playing against like random like JBL games that his dad was setting up. But now there really isn't much to say about his performances because who else do you want him to play against? I mean, he's playing against the best in the world. You can't really get much better than that. So I think that's hard to deny, especially becoming the youngest player in NBA history to get a triple-double.
That was a big stat. So we're going to go across the board with the stats. So on respective teams versus James Wiseman and LaMelo Ball, Golden State Warriors are 6th place in the Western Conference, and they hold a 6-4, 600 record. The Charlotte Hornets are the 6th in the East as well, but on the other side of the bracket, and they're 6-5, so they have one more loss, respectively. So James Wiseman is a 7-footer, and he's listed as a center, and he's averaging 10.9 points per game, 6.1 rebounds per game, but only 0.3 assists per game on 20 minutes a game.
Center, it's not his position. He's not a.
Yeah, he's not a passer. I get it. So that number's not going to be there. But he's playing. He's shooting 48.4% from the field goal and 40.3.
He's also first in blocks among rookies. He's averaging a block and a half per game too.
So that's a stat that obviously is well noted. But what surprised me here before I go to LaMelo Ball is that James Wiseman's actually shooting better than LaMelo Ball from 3-point and from regular field goal by a substantial amount. So, I mean, I'd never known Weisman to be a spot-up shooter and some guy to just run in and score, but he kind of has proved that he has that level to his game in the NBA for sure. He can shoot over.
I think that's definitely true, but I think that the volume of shots that he's taking and the level of difficulty involved are going to sway those numbers. I think that he's more of an inside threat a lot of the time. So when he's coming in for dunks and stuff like that, you're going to expect a higher field goal percentage where LaMelo doesn't necessarily have those physical attributes to do that. That's why Giannis is often shooting the highest percentages in the league because of his game. And when you're starting to shoot long twos and things of that nature, your field goal average is going to drop down quite a bit. And LaMelo is making dribble moves and coming off screens in a lot different manner than James Wiseman is coming off for threes, where James is kind of staying at the top of the key, shooting some threes up there. He's more of a spot-up shooter. He's really not creating that three, which is definitely more difficult. And that's kind of what makes Steph Curry such a great player.
He's a spot-up shooter. And Steph Curry really changed the way the game was played. And I think
generational.
Yeah, and I think that, it's hard to kind of compare a point guard to a center, but also you can in a way of who's doing more for their team. And you kind of can in that way because the Charlotte Hornets have built a very, very strong team around LaMelo Ball, and LaMelo Ball, respectively, is averaging 12.6 points per game, 7 rebounds per game on the dot, and 6 on the dot assists. 25 minutes per game for a rookie is very, very impressive, shooting 41.8 from field goal and 36.5 from three.
He's also averaging a 1.6 steals per game, which is leading all rookies, which I think is also very impressive because a lot of people figured he would be a defensive liability.
Yes, that's true. He doesn't start yet, but can you see LaMelo Ball starting for this team in the future, even if you don't think?
Dude, I mean, that goes without question. When you draft a player like that, third overall, like they know what they're doing. So, one other player that I want to highlight that actually we didn't bring up here that I think is another amazing rookie is Tyrese Halliburton for the Kings. Kings are underachieving again. I mean, it's just kind of how the Kings have been. They're 5-6 right now. They're 11th in the West. But I just want to go through Tyrese Halliburton's stats real fast and, put him next to LaMelo Ball and James Weisman, who were both, top prospects, whereas Tyrese Halliburton, he was the 12th overall pick, but he wasn't as highly touted as, these top 5 picks. So he is currently third in points overall with rookies. He's averaging 12.1 points per game. He's second in assists, averaging 5.3 assists per game. He's second in steals per game, averaging 1.3. And I think it's interesting to note that among rookie shooters who took over 1 3-pointer per game, he's averaging shooting 49.9%, which, I mean, in the NBA is an absolutely elite, 3-point shooting percentage. That's for a rookie to come in and do that says a lot. You shooting 38%.
That type of number can get you in the 3-point contest as a rookie.
Oh, absolutely. He has been balling out this year.
Yeah, he has. And that's more of a name that not a lot of people really know, Tyrese Halliburton. And that's kind of good that you can shine light on, more of an underdog player, because that's what we like to do here at Shock Factor. We don't talk about the best guys always. We got to talk about some of the guys who are under the radar and kind of balling out, making their way. Because the NBA is a tough environment to play in.
Oh, yeah.
Your body.
I think Peyton Pritchard is also definitely. I know it's a little bit of a hometown bias, but I think that he's definitely been a surprise. I wasn't expecting too much out of him as a 4-year player, and at his pretty small stature, pretty similar to the way that Smith is going to go into the NFL. But he's been playing really well as a role player for the Celtics so far, and I think that he could definitely be like a Lou Williams type player.
Absolutely, a future piece of their bench. For sure,
very good bench scorer.
Brings a lot of energy.
You can tell he's a 4-year player, just like based on the experience. He's a very smart player. When you watch him, the way he navigates the court, you can tell he knows what he's doing. He feels comfortable in the environment, and that's huge.
His IQ is really, I think, why the Celtics liked him a lot, because he can shoot the 3 from deep, obviously, but he can go and make a game-winning rebound on a putback, as we saw him do, and that was a pure instinctive play. I mean, there's no, just instinct. Put it right back up, and that's what he did, and he won the game. And at the time, he probably wasn't thinking much about it, but when you really look at what he did, that's just like a short clip of what's the
instinctual play. You can't teach that kind of stuff.
No, you can't. It's just instinctive, and you're either born with it or not. We see a lot of great players in the NBA. We'll take a guy like Dennis Smith, absolutely generational jumping talent, and can jump out the gym, whatever. But when it came down to it, when he was on a team that, he needed to score for and have a good IQ, we saw him be selfish at times. And that's why the Knicks had the record they had. You know what I mean? It's all about IQ. Definitely is. And I think Peyton Pritchard has the IQ that the Celtics wanted, hence why he's playing as well as he is in their Brad Stevens system right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great draft class. You also got Patrick Williams for the Bulls, and I don't know the stats at the top of my head, but I mean, LeBron James was actually preaching about how amazing of a defensive player he is, how he's reminiscent of Kawhi Leonard, with his length, with his lankiness, how much, how just feisty he is in terms of, being on the ball carrier, off ball defense, which is very important. I think he's also, a very, very, interesting prospect. For a lot of NBA draft talent, they come in, they can score, they can pass, but a lot of players have difficulty with the defensive side of the ball coming in. For a player like him, with his size to come in, and be very, very already, elite defensively speaking, he can work on his offensive game in the next couple of years. I think he could be another excellent player in the NBA.
I agree. I definitely do agree with that, Max. So, I mean, is there anyone else in the NBA that's been kind of shaking heads? I mean, I know Anthony Edwards kind of has.
Oh, Anthony Edwards has been really good too for the good.
He's been what he needed to be. You know what I mean? I don't know if he's the best rookie in the class, because as we know for that, I would like to bring Edwards into this argument at this point. And, we don't really know what he can do. He's on a team with D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns. He's got the pieces he needs. He has that big three. But, is he better for his team than a guy like LaMelo Ball? He's not passing as much. He's not a passer. It's different.
My concern with Anthony Edwards kind of lies in the fact that he almost reminds me of like an Anthony Bennett type player. And Anthony Bennett came in the NBA and was just not good. And the reason Anthony Bennett came in the NBA because he was not good was because he stated it even before, the draft, was that he didn't find interest in basketball. The sport didn't excite him. And I think if you're going to go into a professional league, you have to be excited about the sport you're playing. If you're not going to want to put the effort in. You're not going to subconsciously dedicate your day and all of your time to it. It's going to be a lot more work. And I feel like for NBA players, they learn to have fun with the game. That's where they really start to find their comfortability, their spot, their role, and they really start playing fluidly. They start playing better. I think Anthony Edwards, he did say that he wasn't interested by basketball. He's called himself, a generational athlete, that he could do whatever. So it's going to be very interesting to see where he goes. But at this point, I think we're going to pretty much move on from the NBA, and we're going to start talking about the Junior League Hockey Tournament.
So I was following this pretty closely. Bishop Henrikin guy who ended up moving over to the national program, Brett Berardi, got drafted by the Islanders. They came out and shocked the world and beat Team Canada at the Junior Worlds Tournament 2-0 in the championship. They definitely started to stir up some controversy. They ended up taking this picture with a trash can with the Canadian hockey logo on it, which I think is definitely a bold move. They played against pretty much an all-star team of draft picks. They had the second overall pick from this year's draft on their third line. It was definitely a tale of two very different teams, but they kind of pressured Team Canada and played them at a speed that they weren't used to because they were pretty much dominating teams. They had a little bit of a rough start against Russia in the exhibition games, but they really came up and turned some heads. The game against Finland was a lot closer than really the one that they played against Canada. I think Canada came out a little bit dry, and they were a little bit flat coming into the game. They didn't really show a lot of fire. I think they kind of expected to walk all over Team USA, and they brought us pretty special intensity. And you gotta love to see the U.S. boys win, especially against Canada. So.
Especially with our hometown hero, Brett Berard. Even if he doesn't know us, shout out Brett Berard. That's very big, and congratulations for taking home that championship. Way to put forward on for sure.
Especially the PC guy too.
So I agree, and I know I have friends who went to Hendricken, as Cam knows, that knew Brett Berard and follow him. They played hockey and they follow him very, very closely. So the fact that he's in the NHL now and he's doing things as he's doing, shout out to him, man. That means anything you can put your mind to, you can accomplish, and he's walking, living proof of that. So now I think we kind of want to transform into some of our moneymaker segment, as we call it the breadwinner segment, and
that's what we are here.
Yeah, exactly. We're all breadwinners here, and I would like Cam to pose this question, and
all right. So we were talking about it the other day, and we were wondering what each of us were going to say for this. But if you were given $100,000 to invest right now, would you lean more towards the stock market or investing in real estate? I personally would say into the stock market. I think that it's tough to beat index stocks. Put 90% of it away into index, the SP 500, Dow Jones, things like that. You can't really beat the market, and I think that $100,000 is kind of tough to move around in real estate. But what do you think, Jack?
Honestly, I would go real estate here, and that's because the market we've kind of seen change a little bit. We've kind of seen more people kind of get a little more job stability as COVID starts to near the beginning of its end. We can start to kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel as we're starting to get our reality back and starting to move to, I don't know how long it'll be till maybe we'll have masks for as long as we're on this earth again. Maybe that's just our new, kind of reality. But yeah, I think that, at the end of the day, if I had $100,000 and someone said you have 24 hours to invest this, stocks or real estate, right now I'm going real estate. And that's simply because I'll put $100,000 or maybe even I'll buy a house or land for 80, 70, put the rest of the 30 in renovations, and then I'm going to sit on that appreciating asset and I'm going to wait until it is worth more than I paid for it. And on this market especially, we see places like California that's a good buyer's market because it's starting to go down as we see the taxes. Joe Biden and his administration are about to just tax levy everybody in California. They're moving out of California. People are going to start to go to Florida, and those markets are starting to get more saturated and going to build up. But if you can get in the right market, like, you know, a New Jersey market or something that's more lucrative and kind of like a Montana, you'll get a very good deal, and that asset can appreciate for you. So for that answer, I would go for flipping a house with my first 100K.
So personally, I think the new thing, and I think the evidence kind of speaks for itself, is cryptocurrency. If I got $100,000, I'm gonna invest probably a portion of it into Bitcoin. I mean, considering exponentially how much Bitcoin has grown, it's gonna be a point where it pops, but I don't think it's anywhere near that. You know, it keeps going up. It's somewhere in the 40,000s right now, and just a few years ago, it was worth about $1 per. I mean, that kind of growth is just, you know, remarkable. You know, you do the math. If you invested $7 in Bitcoin, you know, back in the day when it first originally came out, you'd be worth upwards of like 78 million right now, and that speaks for itself. So I think cryptocurrency is kind of the new thing. That's definitely where I would find myself investing. The main one's Bitcoin right now. Elon Musk also kind of shouted out something known as Dogecoin.
I'm invested.
I invested in Dogecoin as well.
That was off your word too.
Yeah, that's that. He was talking about that, hyping that up a little bit. And I mean, Elon Musk, considering that, you know, he's been fluctuated between the number 1 and number 2 most rich person in the world. I'm going to take Elon Musk's advice. You know, I think he's a pretty smart guy. I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Yeah. I tweeted one word, Doge.
Yeah.
So that's where I first
immediately
heard of it.
I've been getting killed a little though.
I'm Harry. I'm waiting for like 8-9 years. You know what I mean? I'm not doing anything within a few months at all.
It's definitely a long-term holding for me. I don't think that Elon's Dogecoin is going to go to $1 million in a day, but I think it's a good investment. That's why I made it, and that's definitely why I'll do that. Not going to lie. So, Nando, what do you like?
Yeah, so for my take, I'm kind of mixed on this, honestly, if I'm going to be real with you guys, because as much as I've been getting into stocks now, you know, the market's crazy at the moment. So you put it into anything, most likely it will, you know, make you money in the long run. But I'm going to have to go with real estate only because there's so much you can do with it, right? You can rent monthly, you can rent it out. So you get monthly checks. It's more stable, I guess, if you want a secure income, I guess. So yeah, flipping houses, maybe selling them, renting them out. Yeah, that's what I would do with my 100,000 for sure.
So this is what I got from you. So you would buy the house, but you would also for like a duplex, and then you'd rent the other side to pay for your living expenses. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, or even, you know, so both. Or I mean, yeah, rent.
I just think it'd be tough to do. It would be tough to do that with 100,000. You'd have to mortgage it and things of that nature. So I guess it depends on really what you're trying to do with
real estate.
100,000. Sorry to interrupt you, boys. 100,000 is 100,000. You know, you're probably not buying a nice house with it, but you can buy something that's probably foreclosed on or broken down pretty heavily.
It would take time.
Or you get a land plot. But if you do it in the right place and you get the right connections, I think that could be, you build a small little cottage or something that you go skiing on, or it's just the land. I feel like is the location nowadays is really where you're going to make your money. If you don't have a good location, you don't have a good money maker. You know what I mean? And your property.
I guess it depends on what the rules are of it too. I like what Nando's talking about as well, especially like getting a duplex or an apartment building. If you can get a good financing plan and a good mortgage on it, where you're kind of getting that 100,000, but also paying off your payments through other people's rent. I mean, obviously you're going to eventually own that property at some point, and that's going to be invaluable if you keep it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're having like the person renting out basically pay for the house.
He's paying for you to live there pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's how lucrative the housing market can be. You know what I mean? You can have a roof over your head at the same time and be getting it for free. It's pretty nice. I definitely would say that. So everyone kind of went housing because stocks really are kind of shaky right now. We don't really know what the future holds with this new market and new administration. So I could definitely see why people are moving their money out of stocks and changing it into long-term securities. But now, so at the 45-minute mark, we just hit our first 45-minute mark.
Yes, sir.
Exciting, you know. It's our first ever podcast. You guys are, as viewers, whoever's watching this is kind of getting a feel for our show right now. But we're going to leave you with an exit question. And I think it's pretty appropriate for today. And what's one thing you would expect to change in the sports world coming soon, 2021?
I think that weird collabs like Nickelodeon did with the NFL on the wild card games might be in the future. I think that people are really leaning towards tech and people are taking big risks. I think that's definitely a little bit of a flop. I don't really know why the NFL decided that was a good idea, but I think that things like that are the future. I mean, you're even seeing like branding on hockey helmets and on NBA jerseys. So stuff like that is going to keep growing. I think it's all obviously money-making schemes. All these organizations aren't in it necessarily for the love of the game, but in it for mainly money. And I think that you're definitely going to see more and more of that moving forward.
Adding on to what Cam said, I agree. I think that sports kind of went in a new direction this year. I can vouch for him. He didn't say it, but he's a varsity basketball player, and his season went from like 35 games to 12 games, and he has to watch film online now. He can't practice with other teams. Like, they have changed the sports world so dramatically. Now you have to wear masks at practice, and it really can overall affect your performance, which I think that we're kind of, this COVID thing really does affect sports negatively, because you can see there's not as much fans at the games. You were looking at the national championship game. They filled that stadium in Florida. They really did. That's the most stadium I've ever seen on TV yet. And I was kind of promising for sports, I'm not going to lie, but what I see coming in 2021 is more computerized referee technology. I really think that they're going to start to use robots a lot more in decision making, because controversial calls are a big problem in NFL. As we can see, we know Bradley,
everything,
on that pass interference, or just an inbounds or out of bounds call that a ref has a split second to make that decision. You can make sure that the calls are always straightforward, and NBA's kind of moved towards that with the challenge rule. They've really changed the dynamic of the game, because now a goaltending thing that's called a basket in a crucial moment can be called back. You know what I'm saying? Because we have this video review, so it does change sports dramatically, and that's why
I think that it would be cool if they were able to intertwine something similar to what they do in tennis with like line challenges, where it's like automated, if stepping out of bounds or the ball being out, stuff like that, where they can build tech, that can detect that and kind of help refs kind of make their decisions. And I think that like the IBM, like Watson and stuff like that, they've been doing a lot of that with like 360 views, and I think that would be very interesting, especially in basketball, just with they're kind of in a close quarter. It's tough to do with football because the climate's a little bit hard to control, but I think that there's definitely room for improvement with tech in the NBA and hockey probably as well.
The way I see in the next year, I think the biggest thing, with the whole COVID intrusion of sports is the fans. Like you were saying, there's fans in Florida, but that's the only state you can really do that right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be completely honest, I don't have the slightest clue with what direction it's going to go, because the country's divided on, should we open it? Should we close? That's a topic we don't have to get into. But overall, are we going to move towards something where it's more virtual and you're going to, be watching games if you pay for a ticket from your computer? Or are we going to start to try to slowly ease ourselves back into that normality of going to games, paying for games, and, tailgating incident in stadiums?
I think that, at the end of the day, Max, where you're talking about, these fans and where we're going to go with it, it really all depends on like the new administration. It really all is politics. This is all politics.
For sure. And I saw a report, Dr. Fauci. He said possible in-person or attendance for concerts in the fall. So I don't see why having people in a football stadium would be really different, or for any other sport that's happening coming this fall. But if that doesn't happen, I see changes like not like as corny as Nickelodeon, but like you saw like touchdown. There was like a slime graphic. There was like first down marker. I know that was different, but I see they're gonna have to make it a lot more entertaining for people watching at home on TV rather than in the stadium, because that's kind of where we're moving at the moment.
And the players definitely there definitely is a little bit of a change in the game now, where there's no home field advantage anymore in sports. Like
exactly,
we lost that. You're right.
Over COVID, are we serious? Now, and that's our timer, but it doesn't matter. We're going over a little bit today. You know, when you lose something like that and you lose an atmosphere like that the players feed off of, and a lot of times you used to hear in press conferences like, the fans helped us win that game. Like Boston Celtics was like, the fans helped us win that game. So I don't know. I think that not having fans really does change the dynamic of the way sports are played, and the fact that now it's just a quiet stadium, so you don't really have that energy. You have to kind of bring your own energy, and that's kind of different. Definitely coming.
Absolutely, I agree.
But yeah, I think that was our exit ticket question, and I really want to thank everyone who's watching right now for watching us at Shock Factor. We're going to start this a Tuesday at 9 show recurring, and we're going to do our best to get on here and pump out content for you guys. And I think
definitely follow our Instagram, Shock Factor Podcast.
Cam, you want to
post a lot on there for sure.
But yeah, we're just kind of getting our feel, but we're all young and like-minded, and a chance where we just want this chance for a platform to speak our minds. And we can thank SFBN Rhode Island very much for this platform.
Absolutely.
And Ron
Robert. And definitely follow us on Instagram at Shock Factor Podcast. But you'll definitely come and see your boys again next Tuesday at 9 p.m. We'll be back again for our second ever episode. But thank you guys for watching.
Thanks, guys.